A remake usually has one goal at the beginning of the game: get the player soaked in nostalgia as quickly as possible. Making them feel all the gooey emotions from ages past immediately is the key to making a good first impression, which is why the Silent Hill 2 remake shocked me by starting off with a brand new puzzle in Neely's Bar instead of jumping straight into one of the most beloved levels in the franchise, the Woodside Apartments. Before we analyse the puzzle itself, can we all just take a moment to applaud the sheer confidence/insanity of this creative decision? This is Bloober Team's most important game, and they know that their studio is divisive, and any deviation from the blueprint of the original will be put under intense scrutiny. So to not only make the choice to add their own content to the game, but to put it before almost anything else, speaks to a degree of utter madness within the studio, because whatever they make will be put in direct comparison to Team Silent's puzzles, and putting it first is sure to make purists have uneasy first impressions. Even the most transformative remake of all time, Final Fantasy VII, starts with a shot-for-shot recreation of the original, followed by an action set-piece that oozes nostalgia before establishing that this adventure will be radically different. So for Bloober Team to come out swinging, saying that they're confident enough in their own ability to add their own content to a legendary game is incredibly brave, regardless of how their revised opening worked out. Yet somehow this puzzle is great, and wholly unique amongst the rest of the game's puzzles. What I love about it is how it establishes exploration and lets the player immerse themselves in the fog-enveloped town. For as iconic as the fog of Silent Hill 2 is, you don't ultimately spend much time in it. You spend most of your playtime in decrepit buildings and nightmarish distortions, often surrounded by pitch blackness. It's a lot like Zelda. We think of the game as set in this gorgeous overworld, but most of the playtime is spent inside dungeons. This new puzzle ensures that the player spends far more time surrounded by the enrapturing fog as they search for the components required to fix the jukebox, establishing a much stronger atmosphere than the original, though to be fair it's working with a much stronger toolkit than the PS2 game. With this in mind, it's vital to place this new section before we enter the apartments, as Bloober Team needs to showcase the town itself before we explore any building. Now ultimately, familiarizing ourselves with the town isn't that important, as this is the only section in the game that could credibly be described as non-linear, but it makes sense to expand on the most iconic imagery from the game, the fog, as during the nighttime the fog has vanished, and only returns for the final road to the hotel, which is an odd Mandela effect to realize that the original game only has about 30 minutes spent wandering the streets in the fog, despite it being the thing most people associate with Silent Hill 2. I wonder if Bloober Team realized just how little time was spent exploring the town in the original, and added this section to avoid people misremembering how integral an aspect of the PS2 version that was, and sought to recreate what existed in people's hearts rather than what's in their memories. They certainly succeeded, as this section was so authentic to my memories of Silent Hill 2 that I was questioning whether I had just forgotten about this puzzle, because my memories of Silent Hill 2 are also predominantly of exploring clouded, desolate streets, even though when I examined a walkthrough of the game, it revealed to me that it was a shockingly small amount of gameplay, and I only played the original for the first time in December. But another change Bloober Team made even earlier, certainly stuck out to me as a variation of one of the original's most iconic scenes: the introduction of combat, and reveal of the first enemy. And this time around, I don't think the change was warranted, or even a success. Even though the change is rather minor, it massively affects my interpretation of the scene. The change is as simple as location. In the original, you follow the trail of blood to a narrow tunnel, where the line figure emerges from the edge of the frame, illustrating the importance of the enemy. The enclosed space of the tunnel builds a claustrophobia in the player's mind, as they're now trapped in a small space with a grotesque abomination and a newly acquired wooden plank. As the player has no context for how difficult the game will be, it's an excellent way to introduce an enemy in a horror game, not to mention the gorgeous cinematography of this scene. In the remake, this location is changed to a house, where you explore the rooms until the monster pops out. The key difference between these scenes is the lighting. This scene takes place during the day both times, but the original game purposefully moves to a dark area to introduce a dark moment, obscuring the enemy from view and creating a sense of mystery. While the remake also begins like this, when the figure lunges into the light, that suspense of the original game is lost, and the more open area also sucks the tension out of the gameplay, and I'm not sure what the reason for changing the location of this scene is, which is strange to me because this isn't the only iconic scene that takes place in a different room, namely the boss fight in the apartments. I'll be back in 2 days. In the meantime, here's a video about the missed opportunities of messing with the player's sense of reality in the remake.